I stood on one knee at the edge of Lake Michigan, holding out the diamond ring that took me 3 years to save for. The sunset painted the Chicago skyline gold as Sarah gasped, tears streaming down her face. After 7 amazing years together since meeting at Northwestern, this moment felt perfect. She said yes, and I believed our future was secure. We trusted each other completely. The wedding was just 2 weeks away now, and Sarah was heading to Las Vegas for her Bachelorette weekend with her friends. She had been acting strange lately, more distant, but I brushed it off as wedding stress. Before I continue with the moment that shattered my world, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit subscribe if you have ever had your trust broken by someone you loved. Everything in my life felt perfectly aligned before that fateful weekend. At 32, I had built a successful career as a software engineer at a respected tech firm in Chicago. Sarah and I had purchased our dream house in a charming suburb just 6 months earlier, already planning which bedroom would eventually become a nursery. The wedding plans were finalized, to the smallest detail, from the custom monogrammed napkins to the carefully curated playlist for our first dance to John Legend. Our relationship had always been the envy of our friend group. We met during sophomore year at Northwestern, when Sarah accidentally spilled coffee on my laptop in the university library. Instead of being upset, I found myself captivated by her genuine remorse and her offer to buy me coffee for a week to make up for it. That week of coffee dates turned into 7 years of building a life together. Communication and trust were the foundations of our relationship, or so I thought. We shared phone passwords, had regular date nights to stay connected, and made major decisions as a team. I had never once doubted her fidelity or commitment, which made what happened even more devastating. The subtle changes began about 3 months before the wedding. Sarah started staying later at her marketing job, often coming home looking exhausted but oddly energized. She became protective of her phone, subtly angling the screen away when I entered the room. She started spending time with a new group of friends from work that I had only met briefly at a company party. They seemed nice enough, but very different from her usual circle, more focused on partying than the quiet game nights we typically enjoyed with friends. I convinced myself these changes were just wedding stress and planning fatigue. After all, Sarah had taken on most of the wedding arrangements, insisting that everything needed to be perfect. When she seemed distant during conversations, I attributed it to mental exhaustion from juggling work and wedding vendors. When she started going out more frequently with her new friends, I told myself she deserved to blow off steam. When the Bachelorette weekend finally arrived, Sarah seemed unusually excited, packing far more outfits than a 3-day trip would require. I helped her load her suitcase into the Uber and kissed her goodbye, telling her to have fun but stay safe. I had planned a quiet weekend myself, mostly catching up on work and having my best friend Mark over to watch the Bulls game. The first night of her trip, I received a few generic group photos and brief texts. The second night, the messages slowed to a trickle before stopping entirely around 10. I assumed they were just enjoying the Vegas nightlife and went to bed without concern. At 3 in the morning, my phone rang, jolting me from sleep. It was Amanda, one of Sarah, 7 bridesmaids and her friend, since elementary school. Her voice sounded strained and hesitant. I can still hear her exact words. "William, I do not know if I should be calling you, but I would want someone to tell me if I were in your position." My stomach instantly knotted. Amanda explained that the Bachelorette party had gone to a club with male dancers. Sarah had been drinking heavily, which was unusual for her, and had been acting flirtatiously all night. According to Amanda, Sarah had disappeared with one of the dancers about an hour ago, and the maid of honor Jess was actively preventing Amanda from looking for her. At first, I could not believe what I was hearing. This did not sound like the Sarah I knew. But Amanda was the most level-headed of Sarah friends, not one for drama or exaggeration. "What made you decide to call me?" I asked, my voice hardly recognizable to my own ears. Amanda sighed heavily before continuing. "This is not the first time she has acted this way on this trip, William. Yesterday, she was texting with someone all day, hiding her phone screen. And when we went to the pool party, she was all over one of the servers. Most of the other girls are encouraging it, saying what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. But I do not think that applies when you are 2 weeks away from your wedding." My mind raced, trying to process this information, while also desperately searching for alternative explanations. Maybe Amanda was exaggerating. Maybe Sarah was just having innocent fun that looked worse than it was. Then my phone buzzed with an incoming message from Amanda. Proof I did not want, but needed to see. A short video showed Sarah unmistakable in the sequin bride-to-be sash. Jess had custom-made kissing a muscular man in the darkened corner of a club. The final frame showed them walking hand in hand toward an exit. Sarah looking back once over her shoulder to check if anyone was watching. I thanked Amanda with a voice that sounded hollow and ended the call. Sleep was impossible after that. I spent the rest of the night alternating between numbing disbelief, searing anger, and waves of nausea that sent me to the bathroom several times. When the sun rose, I found myself sitting at our dining room table staring blankly at a stack of wedding invitations we had yet to mail to the B-list guests. Sarah returned Sunday evening, rolling her suitcase into our home with a bright smile that faltered slightly when she saw my face. She handed me a Las Vegas snow globe, a cheesy souvenir she knew I would normally find amusing for its irony. I accepted it silently, turning the tacky object over in my hands while my mind raced with how to approach what I knew. I had spent the day deliberating. Should I explode with anger immediately? Should I calmly present the evidence? Should I give her the chance to be honest? I decided on the last option, clinging to the desperate hope that there might be some explanation that could salvage what we had built together. I made dinner her favorite pasta carbonara and opened a bottle of wine. Throughout the meal, Sarah chatted animatedly about the more innocent parts of the weekend, the fancy brunches and the Cirque du Soleil show. She carefully omitted any mention of clubs or male entertainers. When she finished her sanitized recap, I looked directly into her eyes. "Was there anything else that happened this weekend that you think I should know about?" I asked, my voice carefully controlled. Her smile flickered for just a moment. "What do you mean?" "We just did typical Bachelorette stuff. Nothing crazy." I took a deep breath. "Did you go to any clubs while you were there?" "Well, yeah," Sarah laughed, though the sound was slightly forced. "It is Vegas, William. We had to experience the nightlife." "And did anything happen at these clubs that might concern me, as the man you are supposed to marry in 13 days? Her posture immediately changed shoulders, tensing defensively. "What is this, an interrogation?" "It was just harmless fun. Everyone does it for bachelorette parties." The girls wanted me to have one last hurrah. She was attempting to sound light-hearted, but her voice had taken on a brittle quality. "One last hurrah," I repeated quietly before placing my phone on the table between us. The video from Amanda queued up. "Would you call this harmless fun?" The color drained from Sarah's face as she watched the brief but damning footage. When she looked up, her expression cycled rapidly through shock, anger, and calculation before settling on indignation. "You had someone spying on me," she accused, voice rising. "That is completely inappropriate. I cannot believe you do not trust me. I did not have anyone spying on you. Amanda called me because she was concerned. She thought I deserved to know what my future wife was doing 2 weeks before our wedding." Sarah's strategy shifted instantly, her anger dissolving into tears. "It was nothing, William, I swear. I had too much to drink, and things got out of hand for a minute. It was just a kiss, and I immediately regretted it. I was going to tell you myself, but I did not want to ruin our last 2 weeks before the wedding over something so stupid. It meant nothing." I remained silent, waiting. Experience had taught me that in moments of panic, people often reveal more when faced with silence than with additional questions. Her tears intensified. "You know how much pressure I have been under with this wedding. My mother criticizing every decision, my boss threatening to fire me if I take too much time off the venue, calling with problems every other day. I just needed one night to not think about any of it. Please, you have to understand. It was wedding jitters, that is all. Wedding jitters." I repeated the words, tasting bitter. "Does wedding jitters also explain why your phone has been password protected for the last 3 months? Or why you have been coming home smelling like cologne that is not mine? Or why half your bridesmaids seem to be covering for you this weekend?" Her eyes widened slightly at the last accusation. "That is not fair. The girls were just looking out for me. They knew I was stressed and needed to blow off steam. By cheating on me, I finally allowed some of my anger to surface. Because that is what this was, Sarah. Cheating. 2 weeks before our wedding. It was just a kiss, she shouted, tears still streaming down her face. And after the kiss, when you left the club with him, what happened then? Nothing happened. We just talked outside for a few minutes, and then I went back to find the girls. But my silence told her I did not believe this obvious lie. Fine, she snapped, anger returning. We went back to his place, but nothing serious happened. We fooled around a little, but I stopped it before it went too far. I realized what I was doing and left. Ask Amanda, if you do not believe me. She picked me up. I called Amanda on speakerphone immediately, who confirmed that she had indeed picked up Sarah, but from the club parking lot, not anyone apartment. And it was nearly 4 in the morning. As this new lie unraveled, Sarah broke down, completely moving from the dining chair to kneel beside me, grabbing my hands. It was a terrible mistake, William, the biggest mistake of my life. But it was one night, one stupid night, out of 8 years together. Are you really going to throw everything away over this? Before I could answer, Sarah's phone began ringing. It was her mother, likely calling to discuss wedding details as she had every Sunday evening for months. Sarah ignored it, but minutes later my phone lit up with her father's name. Against my better judgment, I answered. Sarah's father immediately launched into a lecture about how marriage requires forgiveness and understanding. The speed with which he addressed the situation made it clear that Sarah had already contacted her parents about what happened, crafting a narrative that minimized her actions while emphasizing my anger. He reminded me pointedly about the $30,000 they had contributed to the wedding money that was largely non-refundable at this point. I ended the call abruptly and stood up suddenly, needing space from both Sarah and the home we shared. I packed an overnight bag while she followed me from room to room, alternating between tearful pleas and angry accusations that I was overreacting. I drove to Mark's house, where my shell-shocked expression told him everything he needed to know. The next morning, Sarah showed up at Mark's place, pounding on the door and creating such a scene that his neighbors threatened to call the police. Mark's loyal friend, that he was told her firmly that I would contact her when I was ready to talk, not before. As I maintained my distance over the next 2 days, Sarah's campaign to control the narrative expanded. Mutual friends began texting me, some expressing concern, others subtly suggesting I was being too harsh. I realized that Sarah was telling everyone that I was throwing away our relationship over one minor indiscretion, a momentary lapse in judgment that she deeply regretted. What confirmed my decision, however, was a call from Brianna, a college friend who had drifted from our social circle after an unexplained falling out with Sarah years earlier. She had heard about our situation through mutual acquaintances and hesitantly shared that she had caught Sarah cheating during our 3rd year of dating. Sarah had sworn it was a one-time mistake and begged Brianna not to tell me. When Brianna insisted that I deserved to know, Sarah had spread rumors that effectively ostracized Brianna from our friend group. This revelation broke whatever remaining hope I had been nurturing. The woman I thought I knew, the relationship I had treasured, was built on lies. Exactly 1 week before our scheduled wedding date, I made my final decision. Canceling a wedding I quickly discovered was nearly as complicated and expensive as planning one. Each vendor had different cancellation policies. The venue kept our deposit but released the date. The florist, a kind older woman who had known my mother for years, refunded half our payment. The photographer kept the non-refundable deposit but expressed sincere sympathy. The caterer was less understanding, insisting on 75% of the contracted amount. The hardest part was informing our 200 guests. I spent an entire day composing an email that was both honest and dignified. I explained that due to circumstances that had recently come to light, Sarah and I would not be proceeding with the wedding. I apologized for any inconvenience and thanked everyone for their support throughout our relationship. I deliberately avoided details that would publicly humiliate Sarah, despite the anger still burning within me. Sarah's parents reacted with fury. Her father left threatening voicemails about potential legal action to recover their portion of the wedding costs. Her mother called my parents, berating them, as if they were somehow responsible for my decision. To their credit, my parents stood firmly behind me. My father, normally reserved with his emotions, told me he was proud of me for having the courage to walk away rather than begin a marriage on such a broken foundation. The most troubling confrontation came from Jess Sarah, maid of honor. She cornered me outside my office building, launching into a tirade about how all men have bachelor parties with strippers. So, why couldn't Sarah have some fun too? When I pointed out the difference between watching and actively participating, especially to the point of leaving with someone, she scoffed. "You are such a hypocrite," William Jess sneered. "Sarah has covered for you plenty of times over the years." This baffling statement led to a revelation that shook me. According to Jess, Sarah had confided in her about my alleged indiscretions throughout our relationship incidents that had never occurred. I realized then that Sarah had likely been projecting her own infidelity onto me, perhaps to alleviate her guilt or justify her actions to her friends. The process of separating our lives proved excruciating. Our home, once a symbol of our future, became a battleground of painful memories and disputed possessions. Sarah initially refused to leave, claiming she had put more money into the down payment, a demonstrably false statement that my attorney quickly disproved. After 2 weeks of tense negotiations, Sarah agreed to buy out my portion of the house, a solution that allowed me to make a clean break financially, if not emotionally. As I packed my belongings, each shared purchase and gift triggered memories I was desperately trying to suppress. The coffee maker we had bought on our trip to Seattle, the framed photo of us in Colorado snow, dusting our eyelashes as we laughed into the camera, the collection of concert ticket stubs we had saved from every show we attended together. Each item represented a moment I had once treasured but now questioned. Had she been faithful then? Was she thinking of someone else during those apparently perfect weekends? Sarah's tactics evolved as she realized I would not relent. She showed up at my workplace with tears streaming down her face, creating such a scene that my manager gently suggested I work from home until things settled. She sent hundreds of text messages ranging from professions of undying love to vicious character assassinations. She enlisted mutual friends to plead her case, many of whom eventually stopped when they recognized the manipulation at play. Through it all, I maintained a policy of minimal contact, responding only to practical matters regarding our separation through my attorney. Each interaction required enormous self-control. Despite her betrayal, 8 years of loving someone does not disappear overnight. There were moments of weakness where I found myself reaching for my phone to call her to hear her explanation just one more time, to see if there was any possible way to salvage what we had built. But each time I forced myself to remember the video, her lies afterward, and the years of deception revealed by Brianna. The final blow came when Taylor, one of the few mutual friends who had remained neutral throughout, reluctantly informed me that Sarah was already dating someone new just 3 weeks after our wedding was supposed to have taken place. Even more telling, it was someone she knew from work, suggesting that her infidelity may have begun long before the bachelorette party incident that finally exposed it. I reached my lowest point that night, sitting alone in my temporary apartment, surrounded by moving boxes. For the first time since discovering Sarah's betrayal, I broke down completely. I questioned not only my judgment in choosing Sarah, but my worth as a partner. What had I done wrong? What had I missed? How could I have been so completely deceived by someone I thought I knew better than anyone? 6 months after the wedding that never happened, I found myself in a much different place, both literally and figuratively. The initial weeks after canceling the wedding had been a fog of pain, anger, and confusion. I went through the motions of daily life, a shell of my former self. Friends worried when I declined invitations, preferring to sit alone in my new apartment staring at walls rather than engage with the world. My parents called daily, their concern palpable even through the phone lines. The turning point came when my brother, who had flown in from California specifically to check on me, practically dragged me to a therapist appointment he had scheduled. I resisted initially, insisting I was fine, just needed time. But that first session opened floodgates I had been desperately trying to keep shut. For 2 hours I poured out not just the betrayal, but the shame, the self-doubt, the fear that I would never be able to trust again. Dr. Reeves became my lifeline in those early months. Through weekly sessions, she helped me understand that Sarah's actions reflected her character, not my worth. She guided me through exercises to process my anger in healthy ways, rather than letting it consume me or projecting it onto others. Most importantly, she helped me recognize that, while trust was broken in this relationship, my capacity to trust was not permanently damaged. Parallel to this emotional healing, I made a decision that proved transformative. A former colleague reached out about a position at a tech startup in Seattle. The role offered significant advancement, and the change of scenery seemed like exactly what I needed. 3 months after what should have been my wedding day, I packed up my apartment and headed west. Seattle embraced me with its moody skies and vibrant tech culture. My new role challenged me professionally, demanding such focus and creativity that entire days passed without thoughts of Sarah or the life we had planned. I found an apartment in Capitol Hill, a neighborhood pulsing with energy that made Chicago suburbs feel like a distant memory. Slowly, I rediscovered parts of myself that had been neglected during my relationship. I joined a rock climbing gym, something Sarah had always dismissed as too dangerous. I took weekend photography workshops exploring the stunning landscapes of the Pacific Northwest through a camera lens. I reconnected with college friends who had moved to the West Coast years earlier, rebuilding friendships that had faded due to distance and my absorption in life with Sarah. As my perspective cleared, I began to recognize red flags I had ignored throughout our relationship. Sarah had always controlled our social calendar, gradually isolating me from friends she deemed unimportant. She had subtly criticized my closest friendships, particularly with Brianna before the fallout. She had dismissed my career ambitions when they did not align with her vision for our life together. These realizations did not erase the pain of betrayal, but they helped me understand that the relationship had been flawed in ways I had been unable or unwilling to see. My healing process also involved developing stronger boundaries and a deeper sense of self-respect. I no longer felt the need to apologize for my feelings or diminish my needs to keep the peace. I learned to voice disagreements without fear of rejection. These new boundaries were tested when Sarah reached out on what would have been our first anniversary, a lengthy email filled with nostalgia and regret. Instead of being drawn back into her narrative, I acknowledged receipt with a brief, kind response, wishing her well, but maintaining my distance. The unexpected positive outcomes of this painful chapter continued to unfold. My career flourished in ways that likely would have been impossible had I stayed in Chicago. My relationship with my family, especially my brother, deepened through the vulnerability we shared during my darkest days. I developed new friendships that felt more authentic and balanced than many of my previous relationships. When I finally felt ready to consider dating again, about 8 months after the wedding that never was, I approached it with both caution and optimism. I had coffee with a woman named Allison, a software developer I met through work. The date was refreshing in its simplicity, just 2 people getting to know each other without the weight of past promises or future expectations. While nothing serious developed with Allison, the experience showed me that my heart remained open despite its scars. The most profound lesson from this chapter of my life was learning that sometimes losing someone who does not truly respect or value you is actually gaining yourself back. The pain of Sarah's betrayal was excruciating, but it forced me to confront uncomfortable truths and ultimately build a life more aligned with my authentic self. I came to feel genuine gratitude for discovering the truth before legally binding myself to someone capable of such deception. I realized that true self-worth comes from within, not from another person's validation or commitment. The foundation of any healthy relationship must be mutual respect and honesty, qualities that cannot be compromised, no matter how much history or love exists. Most importantly, I learned that while betrayal reveals much about the betrayer, how you respond to betrayal reveals even more about your own character and resilience. Have you ever faced a painful ending that ultimately led to a better beginning? Share your experience in the comments below. Your story might help someone else navigating their own difficult crossroads. If this journey from heartbreak to healing resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and growth. Thank you for listening to my story today. Remember, sometimes the most painful decisions are the ones that save us in the end. Share this with someone who might need to hear that their current pain could be leading them toward their true path.